Uh, where's it coming from? I'm not sure where it's coming. It's coming from the people in the net wanting something to talk about. It's part of it. Part of it's a generational thing. Part of it, I mean, yeah. So when I started playing, yeah, I was very, very young when I started playing. But I started playing when the hobby was still young too. So I played through the growth of the hobby. But you have players that have. I mean, think about there's people that are playing D&D now, discovering D&D, and they're teenagers that weren't alive when it was created. I mean, there's teenagers playing it now that have never knew of TSR. You know, they were born after TSR went away. That's D&D turned 40 this weekend. So it's part of it. I think it's just a generational thing. It's a different type of game, and it's how people are introduced to it. I don't know if it's the whole new school versus old school. It would depend on how you define that. I mean, part of the things I've heard defined as new school, I don't know if so much apply universally across the board as a new school way of thinking. I know there's the whole your question about player authority. There's this whole thing about players should have all the authority in the games. You don't need a GM. You're right. You don't need a GM, and then you're playing an entirely different type of game. D&D has a game master. Concept, there were, just like, and it's not new now, but I remember when live action when LARPing started coming out, I said, LARPing's a new thing. LARPing was predated by diceless games long before that, and reenactment before that, so it's just a growth of things. I joke around and say, personally, and think that, new schoolers eventually become old schoolers when they grow up. But it's because, it's the video game mentality, I guess. I see that in people coming in that are new to the hobby, and I remember having that same effect, except I was 12. When I had that effect, when it had that same kind of appeal to me and wanted to do the same things. So, but then again, when I was 12, that's when that was new to me. So it's not necessarily because of the age I was at the time. It was because it was new. I was new at the time. So depending on what age you are when you find the game, it's really going to go player to player. I wouldn't say everybody that starts playing now is new school, because some of them aren't. It's just the way you approach. I think it's just the way you approach the what's expected when you get into a role playing game. I mean, if you expect a video game, when you sit down to play a role playing game, that might be a new school. That might be what's considered a new school way of looking at it. But that you're a product of what you were using for entertainment before. You were playing video games. Now you're going to play a role playing game. Like, you expect the same thing. It's not going to happen. But there's when Tolsorian wrote that stuff for that forward for Cyberpunk, that's the thing he was trying to do with that. And now, if I had not taken the time to read that forward, that book would have never came off my shelf again, because he ruined my game. I said it's his game, but that's not the point. He ruined my game. But then I read the thing and I went, okay, I can look at this better now. But that's why he did that. He did that because he was trying to appeal to the difference in, it was a marketing tool, because he wanted to appeal to those players that were coming in that were expecting the video game experience. And that might be where some of the new school thing was. I mean, when Wizards released 3 and 3.5, referring to D&D, when they released 3rd edition, they were trying to pull in the CCG guys, because that's what was big at the time. Role-playing games weren't that popular at the time. There's been a resurgence lately of it. There's the whole old OSR, the whole old school renaissance that's been a big thing over the net for the last few years. That's good. It's bringing some of the back, but you still have people that, I think that's where the combat between the two things. You had people who started playing that have never played the older versions, and then you have a lot of these guys who had stopped playing for a long time and now coming back into it, and that may be where the old school versus new school is coming from. But is there a whole conflict of it? No, I think it's just a matter of I don't really think there's like the edition wars. There's really no war. You're gonna. It's all about promoting a hobby and playing the games you want to play. Yeah.
Technology. Primarily, I put the distinguishing factor between age groups and our involvement within technology. The younger generations now are coming up with different types of what we consider role-playing games. Even though there's little to no social role-playing going on, the title is still applied. So in that sense, a lot of the younger groups come into a tabletop game, a role-playing game that they know, with certain expectations. And that's not the case really here. I mean, I understand there are elements that cross both the genres, an online RPG versus a tabletop RPG. But traditionally speaking, role-playing gamers from the old school, if you will, know what they're into. They know what they're getting into and what they're after, as to where a lot of the new school gamers don't so much. They kind of want to try these things. They want the experience to try these things because they have never done it. They've never had to do this. They can just log into the internet and be done with it. So I think a lot of it comes from the fact that our value as a gaming community in role-playing games is being shifted a little bit. It's being shifted away from the table towards the computer. And, as a GM, I see that as a detriment to the entire gaming community, that we're starting to kind of walk away from these things, because one of the joys of gaming is being able to sit with your peers and go through these things together and kind of develop together. But if we lose that aspect, we kind of lose role-playing altogether, where it's not going to be here anymore. So if that's what new school is going to be and is kind of establishing itself as, then I don't personally want to be a part of that. I would rather go back to first edition, to the original days where we got pen, paper, and that's it. In the same sense, though, I think that as a new school gamer, I learned from my elders. I take them and I hold them in very high regard. The way these games were established, the way they used to be run, those are the glory days, if you will, in roleplay gaming. And a lot of what that is and what that holds to be is what I hold dear as a DM. So I don't completely want to walk away from that. But at the same time, I understand that, things have changed over the past. And as a new generation, I have the power to experiment with some of those things and take what used to be there and maybe bend it and mold it to be something different. And is it always going to be better? Hell no. Trust me, there are failures all the time. But every once in a while you get that gem. When you really establish something good that hasn't been done before. And you know that you're one of the first people to try that out and it works. So in that sense, it's rewarding to be a new school gamer. It's exciting to be a new school gamer. And not everyone in this culture today is something to look forward to. You're going to have bad DMs. You're going to have people who aren't ready, who just aren't prepared. They don't have the aptitude to tell stories and construct worlds, because all they know is their Minotaur Shaman from World of Warcraft, and they know the World of Warcraft world. And that's it for them. Very few of them will even have read The Hobbit. It's all visual now. It's all on the movie screen. So going back a step, going back 2 steps, or even 3, that's where all of this started. That's where the value in role-playing is. And I don't know, I think it's a shame that we walk away from that. And if we're going to lose it, I don't know. In 10 years, I'll be an old school gamer, I guess.